Today we are in our final installment of the series titled A Man Died, in which the subtitle of this last installment will be Ignorance is Not Bliss. And we're continuing on looking at the story of Uzzah and the Ark. And we began by looking at each party that was involved in this tragic event. We looked at David's involvement. We looked at the leader's involvement. And we've gained God's mind on various matters at hand. But now we're going to look at Uzzah's own involvement in his own demise. 2 Samuel chapter 6. David again gathered all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. And David arose and went with all the people who were with him from Baal Judah to bring up from there the ark of God, which is called by the name of the Lord of hosts, who sits enthroned on the cherubim. And they carried the ark of God on a new cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. And Uzzah of Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, were driving the new cart with the ark of God. And Ahio went before the ark. And David and all the house of Israel were making merry before the Lord with songs and lyres and harps and tambourines and castanets and cymbals. And when they came to the threshing floor of Nacon, Uzzah put out his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen stumbled. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God struck him down there because of his error, and he died there beside the ark of God. There was this movie called The Transporter, in which the main character's job was to deliver packages, and his policy was simply, don't tell and I won't ask. Oftentimes, the packages he delivered were illegal. And upon looking in the trunk one time, he actually found out that what he was doing was wrong. But what if he would have never took a look in that trunk and he was pulled over by the law enforcement? Do you think he could have used the excuse? I didn't know. They didn't tell me what was in there. I had no clue. You see, in the court of law, ignorance is not an excuse, because on some level, you are supposed to know. There are tons of real life cases where individuals have given rides to someone and that person turned out to have recently committed a crime or was carrying drugs. And by default, the person also got caught up in the legal mess. And yet they were ignorant and unaware. But yet the law still did not excuse them, because on some responsibility, you need to know. You need to know the people that you're riding with. You need to know what they're involved in. You need to know who you're giving rides to. Ignorance is not bliss. Uzzah's death, at the end of the day, was a direct result of his own ignorance. You see, the ark was supposed to be carried by the Levites. But what did they do? They put it on a new cart. Not only that, non-Levites were transporting it. But you have to understand, the ark had been missing for 20 years. So for 20 years, they knew nothing of the ark. So a generation grew up that was ignorant and unaware of the ark. And because they were ignorant and unaware, Uzzah willingly went along with something that at the end of the day went against God's will. How often have we in our lives unwillingly flirted with danger and teetered on the edge of a serious tragedy simply because we were unaware of the consequences of our actions? Uzzah did have a responsibility. I mean, while we can sympathize with them, while we can kind of understand why this story is tragic, but at the same time, he did have a responsibility. For Deuteronomy chapter 11 said that you are to lay up these words of mine in your heart and in your soul, and you are to bind them on your sign as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall teach them to your children, and talk of them when you are sitting in your house and when you're walking by the way. In other words, what he's saying is that you have a responsibility to know and understand my law, and then to pass them on to future generations. Uzzah was not let off the hook because he had a responsibility. He should have known better. For if he would have known better, he would not even been that close to the ark. Think about it. Once we understood fire and what it can do and the damage it could do, we gained a healthy respect and fear for fire. And we acted accordingly as children as we come to learn about fire. Because we had come to an understanding of what fire is and what fire could do. And if he would have fully understood this, he would not have been that close to the ark to begin with. We today cannot claim the same ignorance of us, spiritually speaking. For in a spiritual sense, we have a litany of resources and a plethora of aids at our disposal. We have all kinds of books and resources and software that can help us to study the Bible. There's applications you can put on your phone. You can get Bible on CD, Bible on DVD. There are people that within our lives can help us to understand the Bible better. There are blog sites, websites, and podcasts, even like the one you are listening to at this very moment. We, at the end of the day, have no excuse on not knowing. And even as you sit here and listen to this podcast today, don't just take my word. Go back, read the scriptures for yourself. It's my intent and purpose that these podcasts will spur you on to deeper studies, to get you closer to God as you learn more about His Word. So go back, read the scriptures, see if what I'm saying holds weight. Because at the end of the day, because He didn't take care of His responsibilities, the results were the same. He died beside the ark. It's kind of the overarching theme that's been through these series of how different actions, different situations can lead to or can come together to form a perfect storm, if you will, which can lead to a bad situation, in which this bad situation was a man's untimely, sad demise. He died because he was ignorant. And when you're ignorant, you don't know. So you have to kind of wing it. You got to kind of guess, is it this, is it that? I think it's this, we'll go with that. But I'm going to be honest with you. There are some things in life I really don't want people winging it. I don't want my aircraft pilot winging it. Well, you know what? I've never flown this type of plane before, but I think I can kind of wing it and figure it out. No, I'm sorry. I'll catch another flight. Nor do I want my doctor kind of winging it. You know, I'm really a dentist, but I think I can perform heart surgery. I mean, cutting flesh is still cutting flesh. Nah, no thank you. There are some things that are so important in life. We don't want our bankers just kind of winging it. Well, I know you put this much money on the slip, but I wasn't really paying attention, and so I kind of just guesstimated and kind of rounded down. No, sorry, that's not going to work. You need to be on point. You need to know. In other words, ignorance is not bliss. Because someone didn't pay attention while driving. The results can be the same as a person who overtly went out and got drunk and was driving reckless. And that is a disastrous car crash. So perhaps you grew up in a religious institution and you grew up your entire life wearing a particular title from a particular denomination. I'm a blank, and you can just fill in the blank, but you really have no clue as to why you're called a blank. Or maybe you have strong convictions. I know this and I believe this, but you really don't know how you arrived at that conclusion, nor have you really ever sat down and confirmed it for yourself. Or maybe it's just based off a few loosely quoted scriptures that are ripped entirely out of their context. You see, what you don't know can hurt you. If my doctor is ignorant, that can hurt me. If my aircraft pilot is ignorant, that can hurt me. If my banker is ignorant, that can hurt me. Many epistles were written for the express purpose of informing their audiences because there's something they wanted them to know. Knowledge is a key component of a relationship. In other words, in order for me to have a successful marriage, then I need to have some knowledge of my spouse. I need to have some knowledge of my wife. That's the reason why when you're dating, you do the 20 questions games, you would talk on the phone for hours and ask all kind of lovey-dovey questions, walk in the parks, and just talk and talk. Why? But because you're going through the process of trying to learn your spouse. Why? I need to know my wife, her likes, her dislikes, her fears, her comforts. Why? So that I can please. My level of love for my wife is expressed by my aim to please. But my aim to please is indicated by my desire to learn. I can't do that which pleases my wife if I don't know. And I can't know if I'm not willing to learn. If I forget something like a birthday or an appointment, you know what? My wife is going to be upset. And she has a right to be upset. Because after all these years of marriage, you should have known certain things. And if you didn't know, you should have asked. And because you didn't ask, that shows to me that you didn't care. In other words, you have no excuse not to know. Ignorance is not bliss. In marriage, let's bridge the gap now. Let's bring it home. In marriage, if we want to grow our marriage to deeper, happier, loving relationships, then it needs to be driven by a desire to know and understand our spouse. We need to seek to see things from their point of view. We can even apply this ignorance is not bliss in life. Oftentimes, when I find myself at this, you'll see something, come up and it'll say, sign right here if you agree to our terms of agreements. And it got to a point one day I was like, you know what? What is their terms of agreements? You know how you will see online, they'll say, click the box if you agree with our terms of agreement. And one day I started realizing, you know what? I'm signing this. I ain't even read their terms of agreements. So you're clicking and signing and getting caught into a contract or something that you don't even know simply because you didn't take the steps to know. Ignorance is not bliss. Many people have credit cards because of that. They didn't know the APR because they didn't read the terms of agreement. Your job. Maybe you want to have a more meaningful job situation. Maybe it's just sapping the energy out of you and just draining you and just making you tired and just regret to go to work. Maybe you can make your work experience a little more joyful by going above and beyond and working not as though you're working for your boss, but working as though you're working for Christ. And how would I do that? By getting the knowledge. In other words, knowing all there is to know about my particular position. Why? So that I can excel and exceed and work as though I'm working the Christ. And not just be content with just going in, being unaware, being ignorant, being passive, and doing a subpar job. Wandering through life aimlessly and unaware can be dangerous to your overall growth and development as a person, both spiritually and just in everyday life application. Ignorance is not bliss. Get in the know, understand, learn about what it is you're doing, whether it's politics, whether it's religion, whether it's your job. Seek to understand and know what it is that you're doing, because anything worth doing is worth knowing. And if it's not worth knowing, then maybe it's not worth doing. Don't be content with just being the unaware, uninvolved, going through the motions type of person. Seek to know. That is your responsibility. And if not, understand that the results can be destructive, that the results can be tragic, and that ultimately it can and very well may lead to a man dying. That is God's mind on the matter at hand. May He bless you and keep you and help you to forever grow and develop. I hope that as you listen to these broadcasts, that you are spurred on to deeper studying for yourselves. In Jesus' name, amen.